Hello and welcome to the MovieKing Podcast. My name is David Jurmann and I'll be your host. To start off today's show, I'm going to review the film Saturday Night, and in the second half, I'll be reviewing the film Woman of the Hour. So starting off with Saturday Night, just for a little bit of context here, I'm a casual SNL fan, casual Saturday Night Live fan. I've enjoyed the older episodes I've seen. I think they're very funny. I think they're entertaining and clever. The newer ones, not so much. I just think Saturday Night Live, like many shows that have been going on this long, have fallen and just not, they're not nearly as engaging as we once thought they were. And I just think they need new writers. They need, just a new creative team to really fix it up. So that's where I'm at with SNL right now. I haven't seen too many of the older episodes, but I have like the ones I've seen, so I'll say that much. And I'm decently familiar with some of the old SNL members that this movie covers. This movie is really about the beginning of SNL and has a lot of people that you would know when the show first aired. And I'm familiar with a few of those people. I'm not like, I'm sure my parents are, where they, probably recognize most people who were there. But I didn't really know a lot of them. A few of them I did recognize, but because I didn't grow up watching those old episodes, this movie was still a mostly new experience for me, so I probably missed a lot of inside jokes and references. I think that's just important to mention, because if you're going into this movie as an adult, you're much older than me, maybe I'm 23 right now. If you're in your 40s or 30s, there's probably a good chance you understand more of the references than I did. And that's totally fine. That's what makes a movie good, but it's just something to note that I probably wasn't as big of a fan of this movie as some people will be, because I didn't really get it. Not that this movie works on a base level, and I'll get to that in a bit, but just to say, a lot of, what makes some of these movies very special to some people is all the references of oh, I remember that. I remember when they did that in the first episode, and, I'm looking at it I don't know any of this stuff, It's I know some of the acts that came later, in the later episodes, recently, and I know some of the older ones even, that were pretty famous, but I'm not a very hardcore SNL fan. I'm not someone who is totally well-versed in this whole show. So just putting that out there, and I think that's important to know. But other side note, I wanted to see this movie ideally on a Saturday night with a packed crowd. I feel like that's just the way this movie was intended to be seen, you're watching it almost as it's live, a Saturday Night Live show, you're watching it 10 p.m. at night, a packed crowd, everyone's just getting hyped, and then meanwhile I saw it on a Wednesday late afternoon in a pretty empty theater, so, I didn't get the experience that was probably intended for me to watch this movie. I mean, obviously it's better than still watching it at home, but just putting it out there, I mean, I'm in the opinion that some people like to say that watching a movie with a packed crowd and the ideal format really makes a movie better, and I say a movie shouldn't be better or worse because of when and where you watch it. A movie's the same no matter what. Maybe your experience will be better, watching Avengers Endgame, with a packed crowd opening night. That maybe makes it a better experience than watching it, several weeks down the line with a pretty empty crowd. But the movie's the same no matter what. I just want to put that out there as well, that I don't think my experience affected how much I enjoyed the movie, but I still enjoyed the movie nonetheless. But anyway, this movie is about the first night of Saturday Night Live. It shows Lorne Michaels, one of the heads of SNL, in particular, as he's trying to get his vision realized as the show is about to air and everything is stacked against him. That's kind of what this movie pitches to you. It's kind of based on a true story of what really happened with SNL when it first aired. And I think just the premise of this movie, to me, is totally up my alley. I mean, I love those kind of real-time, energetic movies. It's everything's coming down, it's all coming down, it's really, you gotta beat the clock, you gotta get everything right, just, those are really fun movies usually, and SNL is, again, a show I'm pretty familiar with, so even though I'm not totally familiar with the older episodes, I can still relate to it enough that I'm I know what the show is, I know what it's about, I know a lot of the people, who are in it, and that's enough to get me interested. And I thought the trailer looked good, I thought it did a good job pitching the story, and I also thought the cast was pretty stacked. I like a lot of the people in here. Gabriel LaBelle, who I loved in The Fablemans, probably also my favorite movie of 2022. Definitely check that out. You got Rachel Sonnet, who I really liked in Shiva Baby, Bottoms, I Used to Be Funny. She's one of the best up-and-coming actors of this generation. She's totally worth seeing in anything she's in. Go see her. Lamorne Morris, who is great in Game Night, is here. Dylan O'Brien, who was awesome in Maze Runner, he's here. Some of you may know him from Teen Wolf. I never watched that, but Maze Runner he's good in. J.K. Simmons, who was in so many movies. I'll only name a few. Whiplash and Spider-Man. And Willem Dafoe's here, who's in The Lighthouse, and Beetlejuice, Poor Things, also Spider-Man. You just got so many people in this cast. It's really a great cast. And that was honestly enough besides the trailer to get me like, ooh, I want to see that. And let's just start off with what I liked about the movie. I enjoyed the real-time pace of it. I think that's like the real pitch of it. You know, it starts at like 10:30 p.m. or 10 p.m. The show's at 11:30 p.m. Like, it really, you know, the movie's as long as the time taking place in the film. So it's really like you feel the momentum of time changing. And I enjoyed the real-time pacing of it, the energetic vibe. Things always moving and it's chaotic and crazy. I like that aspect of it a lot. I think it captured what it was trying to go for in that regard. The score also plays a big part of this, the musical score, and you can feel it intruding on a scene in a good way. Like, it's very loud, it's very, again, chaotic. It really gets the mood going, and you can just feel everything coming to a head. Like, it's really good in that regard, too. And, I mean, I do have to say, another reason I wanted to see this movie is the director and the writer. You know, it's Jason Reitman, who did Ghostbusters Afterlife, which is not the most recent Ghostbusters, but the one before that. I really enjoyed that film. So hearing that he was coming back to direct this, Jason Reitman, I thought that was really cool. And then co-writer Gil Kenan, who directed Frozen Empire, the most recent Ghostbusters film, which I was not a huge fan of. So he was co-writing this movie with Jason. And that was an interesting mix. I do like Gil, though, from Monster House. That's a movie I really liked growing up. And that, you know, just the combo got me intrigued. That was like, oh, this could be pretty cool. We'll see what happens. I mean, I was pretty hyped for Frozen Empire before that came out. You know, it was a pretty mixed bag. But still, I had hope that Saturday Night would be good. But, you know, and really the cast did a good job. The direction is good, again, with the pacing and really the vibe of it all. But as for the script, and that's what I really want to talk about a lot here, is the script needed more work. It had the right energy, as I've discussed, but there's just too much going on and not enough to connect to emotionally. Like, the movie throws so much at you. I mean, you know, there's just like so many cast members around here, and I listed so many people in the cast, but there's just so many people in the movie, so many characters, and they all have different roles to play. And, you know, you can't dedicate enough time to give each person their own thing. So you really focus a lot on Lorne Michaels and his sort of quest to perfect his show. And you're focusing on maybe a couple of the side characters, but there's just too much happening. And I wasn't really able to latch on to a lot of stuff, especially in the first 2/3 of the movie, where I just thought it was searching for its place, and I wasn't totally invested in anything that was happening. Like, I was enjoying watching it, it's entertaining, but I just wasn't totally like, I really, like, gotta know what happens next, you know? Like, sometimes a movie needs that. This is one of those movies that needed a bit more, just of stuff to really connect to. Because if you care about the characters, you care about what they're doing, and I just think Lorne Michaels especially needed a bit more development in those first 2/3 of the film to really carry it home. The last third does do a good job and brings it home, so I thought that really worked in the movie's favor, and I think I like the movie more because of that last third, significantly more. So if you kind of give up on, you know, the movie after the first 2/3, then I think you're missing out on probably what really makes this movie worthwhile. But really, this movie's just not that funny either, which is another thing I feel like is pretty disappointing because it's SNL. It's supposed to be very funny. The tone of the movie, it's intentional. Like, let me be very clear about that. The movie's intention isn't to be funny. It's not that the movie has jokes that aren't funny, it's that there aren't enough jokes in the movie. And that's more of a personal preference. Like, again, just the tone of the movie. I think with the subject of the movie being Saturday Night Live, it would have benefited greatly from having more jokes to laugh at and kind of being more fun. But the movie takes itself more seriously, which as a result, is more intense, but doesn't really have much levity to it. Besides a couple scenes that I enjoyed, but there's just not enough of that, and I wish there was more, because when you don't have too many characters to connect to emotionally, you're looking for something else to grasp onto, and really all the movie has for a while is this feeling of just like, oh boy, things are getting closer, time's moving, we gotta rush, and that's what this movie really has to offer for a while, and it's good, it's just not great. But as I said, the first two-thirds are generally enjoyable, but the third act saves this movie. Once you can feel sort of the beating heart of it and understand why the people involved wanted to tell this story, it feels more complete. It's a more fulfilling film. And that is kind of where I really grew to enjoy it. The ending in particular is very strong and leaves you very satisfied. It was more what I wanted from this movie, and I think it just delivered in that way. So overall, this is a light recommendation from me. It's made for big fans of SNL. Again, if you watched the show growing up, you will probably enjoy this movie more than me. But to anyone else who's just mildly a fan of SNL or just a casual fan like I am, I can say maybe watch it, but I can't give it like a real recommendation for most people otherwise. Like, I think it's for a very specific group of people. If you're not in that group, maybe consider why you want to watch it. And if what I said sounds like a movie you want, then give it a watch. But if you're looking for more humor, a bit more character development, you could probably watch something else and get that effect elsewhere. So overall, I give it a B. It's pretty good. I enjoyed myself watching it. Wouldn't watch it again, but, it worked enough. I enjoyed watching it. And next up on the list is Woman of the Hour. This is a Netflix movie, a Netflix original film, and it was actually at the Toronto International Film Festival is where it premiered. Not this year, but last year in 2023, and then it got acquired by Netflix, etc. And now it's streaming there for you to watch. This movie is based on a true story about a serial killer who was on a TV show, The Dating Game, and an up-and-coming actress, Cheryl Bradshaw, was on that episode, and things just kind of go from there. So, where Saturday Night was based on an NBC show, Saturday Night, this movie covers an ABC show, The Dating Game. And the film is directed by Anna Kendrick. If the name sounds familiar, it's probably because you know her from a lot of stuff, including Pitch Perfect and Trolls, notably. Those are the two probably biggest things she has. I really liked her in also the movie The Accountant with Ben Affleck. She was really good there, and maybe you've seen A Simple Favor. She was very good there too. She's just a great actress, and it was really cool to see her direct for once and kind of give her voice behind the camera too. So that was cool. And I think she actually does a really nice job. There's some interesting shot choices here and effective sequences that really pull you into the action and do a good job of really communicating its point. Anna Kendrick, I think, captures the feeling well of the scenes and plays certain scenes out like a horror movie almost, in that they're so intense, you just kind of feel like you're on the edge of your seat, kind of gripping at like, oh, what's going to happen next? Like, I'm really, really, kind of interested to find out. You don't feel very safe watching these scenes. It really leans into the vulnerability of what the story's trying to say. But also, the movie knows when to be lighthearted, a bit more lighthearted, and lean more into the social commentary of it all, and be a bit less serious. And I think that works. The tonal balance of this movie is pretty good. I like that it knew when to be a bit lighter, but also when it has to get dark, it gets pretty dark and pretty scary. And that's partly due to the script by Ian McDonald, who I think creates a script that is both clever and sloppy. And that's kind of this movie in general. There's a great movie here that focuses specifically on the story with Cheryl Bradshaw that is very focused on telling that story and all the effects around it. I think there's a good movie there that maybe could have been a little stretched out, a little longer, there's a good prologue and a setup to the main story with Cheryl, but I also think the movie constantly interrupts itself with flashbacks, flash forwards, and just other stuff that doesn't feel entirely necessary to the story it's trying to tell. The movie wants to bite a bit more than it can chew, and you'll see what I mean if you watch it. Maybe you won't feel the way I do, but I think we can agree that the movie is trying to cover a bigger story than the one that's just like right in front of you. There's a good subplot the movie actually does have about a woman in the audience at the dating show who has a larger purpose in the story, but I just don't think the movie picks its battles well enough. Like, the subplot's good, but then you kind of keep cutting between that and then Anna Kendrick's character, at the show, and then you have these other, again, unrelated sort of like flashbacks and flash forwards. They're all trying to communicate a grand message. I just don't feel like all of it really worked in the movie's favor of telling this one story. There's, I think, many other movies you could tell covering the other stuff, but just it felt tacked on here to me. And I think the performances here are probably what really save a lot of the film. Anna Kendrick's good. Daniel Zovato is very creepy. The standout to me is Nicolette Robinson, who I mentioned in that last bit about the subplot, woman in the audience. She was really good here. Has a couple scenes that really, I'm sure were very challenging for her, and really, she had to go deep into vulnerability for it. She did a great job. And, overall, I was just hoping to like this movie more. It's just that the movie needed a lot of restructuring and to reprioritize the script better. It's a bit too all over the place. It feels like it's not entirely sure what it wants to tell, because you really have kind of this battle going on of we're trying to tell this story about the dating show, and that's pretty intense, but it keeps cutting away, so you kind of lose the momentum at times. Whereas Saturday Night, it had a lot going on, but it was still focused on just this one thing of okay, the show's gonna start. This movie is okay, the show's happening, but then we also have this thing going on in the future and thing in the past and thing on the side that's happening at the same time. And it also gets a bit lost and confusing because unless you're paying very, close attention, the movie just kind of flashes what year you're in. And if you're not paying attention, you're not really going to know when this stuff is taking place. So I think that kind of also goes against the movie's favor because you really have to be paying, an extremely close bit of attention, which usually I do. I just felt even I was getting a bit lost watching it because, usually when I'm watching a movie, I'm really zoned in. So it was a little hard to follow. I think that kind of went against the film too. But I will say the movie succeeded in making me feel what it wanted me to feel. And it did say something interesting, especially about toxic masculinity and, the stuff women endure over time from men, how they need to kind of communicate their problems and how they aren't really heard and what a woman is kind of used for and all of that stuff. It throws a lot at you, but I think it does do a good job of telling you what it's trying to say. So I felt that bit of it. Just story-wise, I didn't think it was quite as effective as it should have been. Largely just because of how it was told. I think if you just really clean up this movie, maybe in the editing room there's a way to fix it, but especially with the script, I think it's clever. It focuses on Anna Kendrick, and I think it's clever to kind of tell a serial killer story from the victim's perspective, but I just didn't totally feel like the way it was telling the story worked for me. So that's just my opinion. If you watched it and you liked it, I'd be curious to know. But, I think I'd give it a C+. It's okay. It's fine. At parts of it are really enjoyable. Just overall, I just couldn't really say I was too invested in watching it. Overall, I just wasn't a huge fan of what the movie did. But, if you watch it, give it a shot. Let me know what you think. I'd be curious to know. And with all that being said, that about does it for this episode. If you want to follow my reviews, you can find me on Letterboxd at MovieKing1224. You can also listen to this podcast on your favorite apps such as Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and Amazon Music. If you have any comments or feedback, I would love to hear it and improve the show. And of course, if you've enjoyed this episode, please consider liking, subscribing, and hitting the notification bell to hear more like it. I appreciate you all so much for listening, and I'll talk to you next time. Thank you. Bye bye.